Okay, now we've reached the end of the lightning round. Thank you very much. That last one was cool. Okay, next segment up in five. One of these days, I'm going to have to play that entire song somewhere. That's kind of a cool song. But other gaming and pop culture news, we start off with Path of Exile 2. Now, a lot of people will be familiar with the Path of Exile saga and played the original version. This one was released on December 6th, 2024. There's been a couple of updates. Path of Exile 2 is a new title from Grinding Gear Games. Grinding Gear Games did Borderlands, the Borderlands series, if you're familiar with that. This one has 12 playable classes, deep character customizations, all the stuff you look for in an MMO. However, there is a recent a recent bit of controversy with the game right here. Path of Exile 2 just unleashed nerfs so hard they have killed particular characters. Where have we heard that before? That's one of the reasons I wanted to put this in here and kind of highlight it. The nerf in question is to cast on X skills, where those builds, especially in a popular cast on freeze build, has been obliterated, the writer says. And not so much in Warhammer have I seen anyone get to quite that level of language when it talks about some of the nerfs that have taken place. But here in Path of Exile 2, they've jumped right to it, man. Their classes have been obliterated and are now functionally unplayable. Why am I talking about this, man? I guess just to show that whatever issues we may have here on Return of Reckoning, whatever issues, they're not germane to Return of Reckoning. This stuff happens all over the place. But the graphics on Path of Exile 2 are actually kind of cool. And the gameplay itself, it's smooth. You know, it's a smooth playing game. It's a little bit like Diablo. If you played I only played Diablo 1, the first one. The flow of the game kind of matches that, and it's worth your time. But don't expect to play certain classes and certain builds anymore because, as I said, they have been obliterated. Alright, moving on to Metaphor Refranzario. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this game caught my eye just mainly because of the animation, because it looks like an anime series, right? A lot of the anime series that you may be familiar with, it kind of reminded me of not the original Dirty Pair that was put up, but the second Dirty Pair series that came out. This stuff is a little bit better than Akira and the Appleseed Saga. Some of the more recent Appleseed sagas that have been put out in the anime world, the animation here on this game sort of reminded me of that, and that's what drew me to it as a fan of anime, right? I also wanted to point out that, just as I've discussed in podcasts prior, back when I was doing the actual Toth Monra podcast, woke culture has crept into the gaming world, and it's no different here. Metaphor's party reflects the ever-present theme of diversity being one of humanity's greatest strengths. Yeah, okay, that's exactly what I want when I buy a video game and load it up and put it on my computer. That's exactly what I want. I want to be a representative of someone else's political ideology. I've always been of the opinion that merit had a lot to do with your success in life. But, you know, what do I know? Alright. Another aspect of this game, however, is that it does sort of borrow, and again, I like the imagery here, don't get me wrong, but it does sort of borrow from two other games that are a bit more recent, I suppose. Nier Automata and Stellar Blade, both of them, because you can see the primary character has attached to her or him, an alternate helper, right? A sort of bot that follows her around. And you saw that in both Stellar Blade and Nier Automata, and the same thing is true here. It's this kind of fairy-looking thing that helps the guy out from time to time. So, is the game worth playing? Visually, yeah, the game is worth playing. But the type of missions and the messaging that is embedded into it was enough to turn me off from delving into it that deeply. Alright, moving on. Space Marine 2 update. You want to rebuild your testosterone levels? Just play Space Marine 2. But they've put out some updates for this game since last I talked about it. And new features. There's a new Operation Obelisk. And that's original, I suppose, you know. Every science fiction game, novel, movie, whatever, seems to have an obelisk in it somewhere. But there's new operations that you can undertake. And here are some of the latest changes. A Neo-Volkite pistol. Buffs to several primary weapons, bug fixes, and connection issue improvements. Again, where have we heard that before? New operations mode map set up on planet Kadaku. It sounds like one of the planets from the Starship Troopers movie.
We can ill afford another Klendathu.
Would you like to know more?
Lethal difficulty and a photo mode. Oh my god, you gotta have that, huh? New Space Marine 2 feature leaked. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 player found unreleased features like a research center and references to the Thousand Suns. And if you're up on the lore for 40k, that is kind of interesting. And then you also have the research center. Looks like it will introduce a new currency for items involving Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Tyranids, and Thousand Suns. Seasonal content updates are ongoing. Okay, now this is if you still haven't played this game, get off your ass and play it. You know, I mean, it's just a lot of fun. It really is. It's a lot of fun, and you get to go out and just smash stuff. Okay, moving on to pop culture. Yet another MCU star is set to return from the dead for Avengers Doomsday, and that would be Chris Evans himself, Captain America. But what they don't know yet is that Evans is going to show up in Avengers Doomsday as Captain America or as someone else. As you all know, Robert Downey Jr., who played Iron Man, was cast as Doctor Doom. I think that's a good casting. I really do. I think Marvel needs to go back to some of the OG characters that they had. And they're bringing in the Russo brothers to direct this movie, Avengers Doomsday. Which is a good idea, man, because if you go back and watch some of the Phase 1, 2, and 3 films and compare them to what's been put out over the last couple of years, they need to get the Russo brothers back. They need some of their OG characters. And bringing back Downey and Chris Evans, and regardless of what role he might play, it just can't help but be a plus. And I wish they could find a way to bring Scarlett Johansson back into it as well, which of course they could with the whole multiverse saga, right? Of course they could. But Chris Evans is going to be in Avengers Doomsday. That has been confirmed. We're just still waiting to see what character he will play. Obviously not the Human Torch. Okay, moving on from good to bad or worse. Captain America Brave New World. This movie is going to be bad. I've talked about this on a number of occasions. This movie is just doomed. It's a Frankenstein's monster at this point. It's been patched together from so many shoots and reshoots and then further reshoots, story adaptations, story alterations, that it just, you know, what's left? They have no unified vision for this thing beyond Captain America. Sam Wilson as Captain America is established in the Disney Plus series Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And as I've talked about before on my YouTube channel, first and foremost, if you're going to make a movie like this, you have to have a compelling story. And if you don't have a compelling story, it doesn't much matter how many flashy or beautiful things that you put into it or how much action there may be. If the story sucks, your movie's going to bomb. And this movie is going to bomb. That is my prediction. I've made that prediction before. It's trying to be everything to everybody. It's also at the same time attempting to be nothing to anyone. So you can't have a success, you know, with that type of approach. And given the amount of money, they're almost up to, you know, they're up to over $400 million spent on attempting to make this thing. That means they'd have to make $1.3 billion just to break even, and it's never going to do that. Okay, the movie's never going to do that. So Captain America 4 is just going to be another Marvel flop. And I hate to say that, I really do, but that's how it's going to work out. Kraven the Hunter. This flips over to Sony, and this is from the Sony side of the house. Sony still owns the rights to Spider-Man. And what they were attempting to do here with a series of films, which included Venom and Morbius, the Madam Web abomination, and now this, Kraven the Hunter, they were attempting to set up a Sinister Six film. And I think what they should have done was just made a Sinister Six film, man, and not bothered with all this other stuff. Now, the first Venom movie was actually pretty good, and I kind of liked the second one too. Morbius, my God. And then they went from bad to worse with Madam Web, and now we have Kraven the Hunter. So here's my little spiel about Kraven the Hunter. It is better than Madam Web. Okay, if you want to rate the Sony Marvel franchise movies, and the only reason they're making these is because, again, Sony still owns the rights to the Spider-Man character, and they farm it out. They loan Spider-Man out to Disney, and they make them pay for the rights to use Spider-Man. And then they take a percentage of the cut, the intake from the movie, without having to put up any of their own money, which is kind of sweet when you think about it. But the downside, of course, is that they thought they could make these films. Morbius, the Madam Web crew, Kraven the Hunter. They have Rhino. Rhino's in this film, a version of Rhino, which looks like God, if you haven't seen it, the Rhino of this film is... I'm stumbling trying to find words to describe how bad it truly is. But I still maintain that Kraven the Hunter is better than Madam Web. And if you were forced to see one or the other, choose to watch this one, because Kraven has its moments, Kraven the Hunter does have its moments where you think, okay, the action sequence is pretty good. The guy playing the part, he does okay. It's kind of slickly produced. The visuals are believable, and you can kind of get caught up in it. But again, the story is just poorly written. Here's the best way to put it. The story for this film could have been written by a group of 8th graders who happen to be comic book fans. And that's how it comes across, is that the narrative and the dialogue and the plot lines were all written by a bunch of 8th graders who also just happen to be Marvel fans and who just happen to know who Kraven the Hunter was and his place in the MCU. And here's my test for any movie. When you walk out of this film, are you going to feel as if you wasted your money? It's a 50-50 shot, guys. I guess my advice would be, this isn't a terrible movie. It isn't terrible. But you won't miss anything by waiting for it to come out on Netflix or Disney Plus or, whatever. Okay, moving on to my next film. And I think the last item on the list of pop culture stuff here, Wicked. Quick movie review for Wicked. Now, I did see this, and I have to be honest about it. I am not a fan of musicals. I'll put that, and I said the same thing about Joker 2, when I did my review on Joker 2. But Joker 2 sucked. This, at least, is watchable. This film is like the best of Harry Potter, as you can see from the visuals here, right? This movie, the production values, the imagery, the way it was constructed, this is like the best of Harry Potter and the best of the Wednesday series on Netflix melded together to create the Land of Oz. Visually, it's stunning. I mean, visually, the movie is stunning. And visually alone, it's worth the price of admission. Just to see how they created all this stuff, or what they created, I guess is a better way to describe it. And the makeup designs, all the background visuals, the way the actors sort of fill in or fit into the plot as it's been written, all that's amazing. And it's really good stuff. Where it breaks down for me, or where it broke down for me, were two primary areas. One, it doesn't follow the plot of the book. Now, a lot of movies, you can make that complaint about a lot of the movies, because Wicked, the novel, was not all this crap. Wicked, the novel, the book was a bastardized version of Frank Baum's Oz. In other words, it took the Munchkins and all the inhabitants of Oz and showed that they're just as petty and evil and wicked as everybody else. That was sort of the whole point of the book. They didn't quite capture that in the movie. They didn't quite go down that road, I suppose. They did have some agendas to push here. There's an obvious metaphor going on, a corollary being drawn between one of the primary characters in this movie and the message that they want to promote with it. I'll leave it to you to sort that out because it isn't hard at all. So the story wasn't, it did not follow what was written in the original source material. It was more, it was altered, it was drafted to be, again, sort of a little bit woke event, on the lines of Barbie. If you saw Barbie, the agenda it's pushing was kind of matched that feel to it. The other thing was it was a musical. I don't like musicals. I never have. It's like you're sitting in the theater and it's like, oh my God, another song. I mean, do you have to? I mean, really? But that's what makes it. That was what made it tedious for me. So the bottom line is, should you go see it? Yeah, just for the visuals, but otherwise you're not going to be that much impressed. Okay, next segment up in 3.
Popular, you're gonna be popular. I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to boys, the ways to flirt and sound.
It's so boring.
How does that work? Where does that expression come from? It doesn't make any sense.
Make it stop.